Appreciate David both emphasizing from the songs and then also from the scripture reading the matter that we're looking at this year as far as the congregation is concerned. Last year we looked to reach inward, that is, at the congregation to grow toward love with each other. This year we're trying to emphasize reaching out. Therefore, we're having classes on evangelism. The lesson today will tie some of that in. Real estate many times says location, location, location. Here there's context, context, and context. You can never take one verse out of its context and expect it to teach what is in the context itself. We're going to emphasize verses 14 and 15. 4 questions that are going to be asked here. But I thought it interesting, and it works out, that Romans chapter 10 has 10 questions in it. Romans 10 has 10 questions in it, but we're going to emphasize looking at 14 and 15 and the questions that are there. But there is a background that has to be set for this. The chapter begins with Paul praying that Israel might be saved. The last of the chapter, 19 and 21, shows that God has given Israel an opportunity to be saved. His arm is always outstretched. That's based upon what we find in chapter 9 of God being the potter and the Israelites the clay, molding them as he desired, but yet they refused. They did not become what God wanted them to be. But here we have the Great Commission spreading out. Paul's prayer and his heart's desire. And as David mentioned a moment ago about our prayers of leading us to some soul, it needs to be our prayer that we're also praying for the lost. Not that they're going to be saved in their lost condition, but for us to have an opportunity to teach them, for them to be receptive to the truth. And as we'll see in these verses 14 and 15, God says, "Whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved." The word believe is emphasized in this chapter, as it is in the entire book. But we need to understand what he means by believe. And I'll go ahead and get something out of the way as far as laying the groundwork for what it means to call on the name of the Lord. Notice that the Israelites are rebuked as the first 4 or 5 verses are spoken. But notice what is their ultimate wrong, what they have not done in verse 4. Verse 3 rather. For they being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, here's what they have failed to do. Have not submitted. There's the key problem, and what will ultimately be seen as the application for us. Are we going to be those that submit? Chapter 9, as the clay, the Israelites did not submit to the molding of God. For us today, will we submit and therefore be allowed, as that phrase, call upon the name of the Lord? Look, if you would, now at the paragraph beginning at verse 12. There is no difference. God's plan of salvation, or the ability that the verse ends with, to allow those to call upon him, there's no difference. Doesn't matter what part of our world you may live in. Doesn't matter what language you may speak. Doesn't matter what social position you may hold. Everyone can be saved. There is no distinction any longer. Yes, God chose the Israelites to be that special nation, to bring the Messiah into the world. But here there is no difference any longer for those who can become the children of God. John 1:11 and 12. Jesus came to his own, that is, the Israelites. He came to his own, and they received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the children of God. Therefore, verse 12 says there's no distinction. God is rich unto all that call upon him. Our religious world takes this verse and verse 9 and misuse the statement and the phrase, call upon the Lord. Removes that from being true. The blind man said, we know that God heareth not sinners. And so if this phrase means prayer, then what he said is wrong. And if what he said was wrong, Jesus, who was right there, would have told him, that's not correct. But he continues on by saying that if any man be a worshiper of God and doeth his will, him he heareth. You take any dictionary, a religious dictionary or a secular dictionary, and they will at times give you more than one definition for a word. It may have different meanings. And so it is with this phrase, call on the name of the Lord. As you, verse 13, our phrase, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. The end result that God, how do we get to that point? What does it take for us to be able to be saved? Therefore, what does it mean for us to call upon the name of the Lord? Shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? You'll notice